to this evening edition. This is the Daily Debate. The last week was an unprecedented one for the African migrants community in Israel. Marches through Israel, demonstrations in front of foreign embassies, and today a protest outside the Israeli parliament in Jerusalem. African immigrants are calling upon Israel to grant them asylum. But how does the Israeli treatment of migrants differ from other countries in the Western world? And joining me tonight is Professor Galia Tzabal. Thank you very much for coming. African, of course, studies expert at the Tel Aviv University, and Golan, chairman of the Hebrew City NGO. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. And just to give you a bigger perspective, we want to show you what is the treatment outside of Israel and in the West world. In the UK, immigrants are allowed to enter and work, but are not eligible to welfare. In the U.S., security of the southern U.S. border is being enforced thoroughly by police. More than 1 million migrants have been deported in the past years. In Australia, the country is a destination for migrants from Iran, Afghanistan, and Sri Lanka who arrive by boats mainly from Indonesia. They are either turned away at the border or sent to a facility in Christmas Islands. In Spain, Spain has built a 6 million tall fence to secure its border with Morocco. Migrants are sent back to their home countries. And Germany, the government has begun to take a stricter approach in granting asylum requests. In Italy, migrants are being held in facilities until they are brought to trial. And we're going back to Israel, and we're discussing, of course, the situation here in Israel. And of course, the problem, like we said, and like we're seeing for the last few days, it's a very big problem. It's a problem that Israel needs to deal with. How should it deal with?
Well, I think it's a huge challenge. I'm not saying that this country can and should have everybody that wants to come in. I think that now we are dealing with a situation that we've got about 50,000 African asylum seekers. By the way, we've got about 90,000 other non-registered, mainly from ex-USSR, that are in Israel, on almost on the same status as being here in a sort of a limbo situation. But let's concentrate on the African people. So I think that the first thing that the state has to do is to examine the refugee status determination, to have the RSD process done in the proper way, like other countries are doing, according to the UN Convention of the Refugees. And then those who are supposed to be granted asylum as refugees should be granted this asylum, and those who are not, and the situation in their countries is enabling to return them, it's okay to send them back. However, it has to be, a proper process that goes along the regulations.
You and me live in Israel, and we know that the legal system here will take it a long time to deal with. And in the meantime, something should be done.
That's true. And because I don't think that a priori we have to treat them as criminals, because I truly don't think that they're all criminals. And I truly think that at least a very high percentage of them, according to the UN Convention of Refugees, are going to be granted this situation. At least in the meantime, let them work. Let them sustain themselves. Okay,
so it's all working. And there's still a very high rate of crimes in South Tel Aviv.
Well, you know what? I'm not arguing with you about this. I think that they have to work, and I think that there should be a government policy not to enable to concentrate in one place, which is already a weak place. And South Tel Aviv hasn't been strong before the Africans.
There was never fear in the streets. Well, there was never a danger. I live in South Tel Aviv, born and raised in South Tel Aviv, and I must tell you that I was never scared to walk down the streets. And for years, I've been living with Filipinos, with Nepali people, with
African
Chinese,
people,
with African from Nigeria, from Congo, and I've never felt what I'm feeling. Not me and not the other residents.
I don't think we have an argument. Okay. I think that what has to be done, that is, it's a proper management by the government. I think it was a huge mistake to bring the buses from the south, from the border, and drop them in Tel Aviv. What is it? I mean, why is South Tel Aviv has to take the burden and to carry the burden of people?
You are carrying the burden.
We definitely carry the burden. I just want to say one thing about what the professor here said about the fact that she said that there are 50,000 illegal immigrants in Israel. I have to disagree with that. We just saw now on the streets 50,000 people, not to mention the people in Eilat, in Arad, in Ashkelon, in all over the towns.
Well, the thing is that...
Just let me finish the sentence. Just by the immigration authorities, there are 53,000, not to mention the one that wasn't listed, weren't listed, not to mention the birth that was here, not to mention what will happen if they will get citizenship.
So what do you think that the state should do?
The state should, first of all, the fact that they brought them to South Tel Aviv is a disgrace. It just shows the way that the City Hall of Tel Aviv and the government treat South Tel Aviv as though it's like this garbage of the country, I don't know, where you send all the weak people. There were weak people before, there were drug addicts, there were prostitutes all over the streets, and there were people that were from weak society. But that doesn't change the fact that, and this is what I hate that people talk about South Tel Aviv like it was an awful place before. I was brought and raised there, and I just never felt like the place is not mine, like it's not my house, like I should be scared going through the street.
I agree with you that it didn't start it today. However, I disagree with you. I mean, if you look at statistics of South Tel Aviv, it was never one of the stronger neighborhoods of Tel Aviv.
But the crime rates were never that high. I have statistics about the crime rates, which are just high, like you can't even imagine. It's 4 times than what it was before. You can't say it's not because of the infiltrators.
We're not arguing about that. We're not arguing about that. I think it's a horrific thing that the city council and the state have just dumped people in South Tel Aviv. And I think that we both agree that it's not a very strong neighborhood, and it hasn't been for many years.
But let's say if they were being dumped in North Tel Aviv, you think the situation was any different?
I think that
the North Tel Aviv people just wouldn't allow it.
No, I don't think that dumping people anyway is a proper thing to do. I think that there should have been a proper distribution.
No, I think that what the government should have done was examine their request when they arrived here. But let's talk about examining requests.
I agree with you.
Just for a second. I just brought this. I just want to show that for the camera for a second. This is the countries in the world that have infiltrator detention centers. This is only in Europe and beyond Europe. This is 11 African countries that are having detention centers. We are the only country that get criticism. Let me just tell you, I wrote really a couple of little points down. In Malta, for instance, the most strict policy in all of Europe. In Holland, they get sent back to detention center and get fined. You know, we get criticism all the time. In USA, the biggest democracy in the world, there are over 30,000 people locked up.
Australia are getting criticism.
This is a huge... Australia. I'm talking to you about dozens of countries that won't allow these people, even if they are refugees.
More than 70% of Eritreans seeking asylum all over the world
now it's seeking asylum. Okay, first of all, for the last 5 years they said refugees. Now it's seeking asylum.
Refugee is a legal status, and you have to before you're a refugee.
Let's talk about what is seeking an asylum seeker.
But before you are granted a refugee status, you have to go through a period of seeking asylum. It's a procedure.
By the law of the UN, right? Let's talk about this law.
Most countries in the world are signed on this convention, and you know we cannot...
Yeah, but this convention has law. If you really want to talk about it, let's talk.
Of course. What do you think that Israel should do?
First of all, I know I want to answer your question. I just so much want to say something about the UN. I'm so sorry. The UN, by the way, in her convention doesn't say that someone who deserts army is valid to get an asylum seeker in any country. Plus, they pass the border in Cairo when they get, and they're not being prosecuted in Egypt. There is a big agency by the UN that give refugee status to Syrian people, to Iraq people. They didn't stop there because they don't hold the criteria, and this is something that you must say. That's the truth that everyone is trying to hide.
It's absolutely not true that they cannot go through another country.
The thing about the pass 2 borders, they are not refugees, and Israel is not responsible for them.
That's not true. There is an amendment to the convention. There is an amendment to the convention.
What do you mean?
You don't have to seek asylum in the first country you are going through. You can go through another. No, it's not true.
But once they pass another border,
the question about the army is a very legitimate issue. I mean, the issue that we raised.
This is why you're calling them refugees.
No, I was not using that term. I was using the RSD. I'm saying go through the proper RSD, the refugee status determination.
They didn't file for a request.
They weren't able.
They didn't do the right thing because they didn't hold the criteria.
They weren't able because Israel granted. That's not true. Eritreans and Sudanese were granted here protection by a group protection act that the Israeli government
didn't stop in Egypt? Why didn't
some of them have, and some of them went through.
They came here because they're illegal immigrants workers and they want to improve their economic status.
Listen, if you want,
that's not true.
We shouldn't be arguing it. We have to go through this legal process.
By the law, exactly.
Go through the process, and if they are not eligible to get the refugee status, they're not supposed to be in this country.
Now, after 5 years, that the groups of left organization has been telling them exactly what to say and exactly what to do, how can we really find out the truth now?
We spoke 2 days ago. I just want to say we spoke 2 days ago, and I told you this is not a discussion of left and right. This is a discussion of dealing with human beings. This is not a political discussion. This is a discussion about
the left organization make it a political discussion.
The country, like the professor just said here, the country allowed them to get in here. The country gave them the refuge. They gave them asylum. They gave them the group protection. It kept its borders open. Now the borders are closed. Now the borders are closed, and I agree with you that the country should seek and should start dealing with this problem that it's inside Israel. Now, in your opinion, what do you think that the state should do?
First of all, the state should take light, and I agree with you about that, should take the over 50,000 infiltrators that are just in South Tel Aviv, I highlight, and take them and not put them in South Tel Aviv, where they should be if they claim they are refugees. So in every democracy in the world, they should be in a refugee camp. By the way, we have one of the most better and high stand refugee camp. In comparing to other countries, this is a 5-star hotel. If they are refugees, they will not lack anything there, not food, not money, not education, not welfare, not health stuff, nothing. They will have everything there. And there, they should file the right request, and let's see if they are really refugees or illegal work immigrants. But I just can't, they can't come and go out 40,000 people, 50,000 people to the street and demands their right by terrorizing the streets. You know, if you think like me or not like me, if you believe in what I say, if you were standing in front of the U.S. embassy this week, you would have been shocked. You would have been scared.
Why?
You would have felt.
Why?
I'll tell you why. I tell you why. I felt a minority, and when the police closed me in bars, me and 5 other people from South Tel Aviv, because they had. Let me tell you why.
Don't you think?
I'll tell you why.
Listen, don't you think that it's a little bit racist?
Let me tell you why. No, any people in every color, from every place, if there are 40,000 in the streets of them shouting and being held by other people so they won't make a riot, you'll feel scared. If I'm in France, if I'm in the US, and if I'm in Africa, there had people with yellow vests, I'm sure you saw them on the news, from their community that were holding them down, and I saw the rage in their eyes, and I saw them pushing, let us do what we want, and they pushed them back and said, no, you have to control yourself. This is the truth, and I have it on film. I posted it on my Facebook.
I mean, we both have been in the same places, but I think that one of the things that we are very one of the things that I think that we should be extremely proud is that we are a democratic country, and I think that you want to remain a democratic country, and within democracy, there's some things that sometimes I don't feel comfortable with them, and sometimes you don't feel in other people.
I don't feel comfortable for the last 5 years. No one cared about my democracy.
No, I think that it's horrific. I mean, we're agreeing on that. I don't think that there is a reason to go back, but I don't want people to be, I don't want not only 50,000, as I said before, there are 90,000 others that came from ex-USSR, and nobody is even looking at their requests. So there is a huge, a much bigger problem in this country, because on the one hand, we want cheap labor, and on the other hand, we don't want to give them rights.
But you can't use democracy. You can't use democracy to justify any kind of crime and injustice in Israel.
I have to go out for a 10 minutes break. We will continue fighting outside. 10 minutes break for our news desk, and then we'll be back for the I-24 News one-on-one with MK Gila Gamliel. Don't go anywhere. 10 minutes break, news update, and I'll be back. Thank you very much.